Okay, so you've got your digital life humming along on UnRAID 6.1. It's stable. It seems to just work.
Right.
So why even think about UnRAID 7? I mean, isn't the golden rule of server ownership kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, it's a really common feeling. Totally understandable.
It's a valid question, right? You've probably sunk hours, maybe days, setting up your home server, that NAS holding all your important stuff.
Getting Docker just so, the VMs running smoothly.
Exactly. And all your precious data is sitting there. The idea of an upgrade, rocking that boat, it can feel, well, risky.
Definitely daunting, especially when things seem okay.
So today, on the deep dive, that's exactly what we're going to explore. What actually happens if you don't upgrade?
Yeah.
If you stick with that stable 6.1.
We're going to look at maybe some hidden risks there and also some surprising upsides to moving forward that you might be overlooking right now.
That comfort level is real, though. You hit that sweet spot, everything's working. Why invite potential trouble?
It's that natural inclination, isn't it? Leave well enough alone. But as we'll get into, that perceived stability on 6.12, it might be a bit of an illusion.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. The illusion of stability.
Yeah.
It feels solid. Your server's been up for ages, maybe. No real hiccups you've noticed.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've been reading suggests that smooth surface, it could be hiding some underlying compatibility issues, maybe even security things just waiting to pop up.
Exactly. It's like your car seems to run fine, but maybe there's a tiny leak somewhere you haven't spotted yet. Eventually, problem.
Right. And the source material had some really specific examples of this, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. There was this anecdote about UnRAID 6.12 systems just suddenly, poof, not recognizing their cache drives.
Even though the drives themselves were fine.
Totally fine. Hardware checked out perfectly. But the OS 6.12 was the bottleneck. And interestingly, just booting into UnRAID 7 in safe mode, problem solved.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Wow. That really shows how fragile that perceived stability can be, doesn't it? Something latent, just waiting for the right or wrong circumstances.
Precisely. And it highlights how things under the hood might not be as solid as they seem.
And then there's that other scenario, which I think many people have felt. The everything seems okay, but the web GI is totally dead situation.
Oh, yes. The server's technically up, the uptime counter is ticking away.
But you can't actually do anything with it. You can't manage it. That uptime figure gives you this, like, false sense of security.
It's completely misleading, and it points to the fact that uptime doesn't always equal full functionality or even real stability. There can be these deeper compatibility issues in an older OS as everything else around it keeps moving forward.
And that unresponsiveness, it kind of hints at potentially deeper problems too, right? Which leads us nicely into security.
Yeah, critical point, security. It's not static, it's a constant race, isn't it?
Totally. New vulnerabilities pop up all the time. And the sources mention that while UnRAID has backported some fixes to version 6.
They have, to their credit. But it's not really a sustainable long-term strategy. The underlying architecture is different now in version 7.
So staying on 6.12 is kind of like standing still while the threats are sprinting ahead.
Pretty much. Backporting is reactive, and some future vulnerabilities might just be too hard or maybe even impossible to patch properly onto that older foundation.
And you have to think, what's your server actually doing? Is probably running Plex with your media, maybe some Docker experiments, definitely your backups.
Crucial stuff. So choosing not to upgrade, well, it becomes a bit of a gamble, doesn't it? You're betting that no critical exploit targets those functions on your potentially vulnerable system.
It's a sobering thought, really. You're not just protecting the OS, you're protecting everything connected to it.
And UnRAID 7, it's not just about patching current holes. The focus seems to be more on hardening the system for the future, too. Better tools, better default settings. It feels more proactive.
A proactive security stance. Makes sense.
Absolutely. And that forward-looking approach, it also applies to new features in UnRAID 7. Things that maybe you look at them now and think, I don't need that.
But you might down the line.
Exactly. They could become pretty essential. And they're not just like cosmetic things. They touch on core storage and networking.
Okay, let's dive into these hidden gems then. First one mentioned, native ZFS integration. Now, for someone not super deep into storage tech, why is this a big deal?
Well, for ages, if UnRAID users wanted ZFS features, and we're talking really important stuff like built-in protection against data corruption, that silent byte trot.
The thing that kills your files slowly without you knowing.
That's the one. Or more advanced RAID setups, super fast data snapshots. You had to use workarounds, plugins, command line stuff.
Right, potentially fiddly.
Yeah, and maybe not perfectly stable. With UnRAID 7, ZFS is baked right in, part of the core OS, so you get all those benefits, especially that byte protection, which is huge as data grows. Without the complexity or potential instability of third-party add-ons, it's about future-proofing your actual data.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Eliminating complexity, adding protection. Good combo. Next up, baked-in Tailscale. This sounds interesting for remote access.
Oh, it's a game changer for that, honestly. Setting up secure remote access before, it often meant messing with router settings, port forwarding, maybe complex VPN software.
Yeah, not always user-friendly.
Not at all. UnRAID 7 integrates Tailscale directly. It simplifies that whole process massively. You get easy setup, you can give individual Docker containers their own secure IPs for access, even use your server as a VPN exit point easily.
So much simpler and potentially more secure remote access.
Exactly. It answers that pain point for a lot of users who need to get to their server or services when they're away from home. How much easier would that make things for people?
Definitely sounds like a big improvement there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then there were the VM and Docker refinements mentioned. Things like more responsive dashboards, better container isolation, updated hypervisor. What does updated hypervisor support actually mean for someone running virtual machines?
So it's not just about looks, though a faster dashboard is nice. Better container isolation, that's a security plus. If one container gets compromised, it's harder for it to affect others.
Okay, compartmentalization.
Right. And the updated hypervisor. That means better compatibility with the latest hardware features, potentially better performance for your VMs, and better support for running newer guest operating systems inside those VMs. It's those under-the-hood improvements that make the whole system run smoother and more reliably.
Gotcha. Real operational benefits, not just cosmetic.
Precisely.
And then briefly mentioned early Wi-Fi support in the 7.1 release candidate. That's intriguing. No more Ethernet required, potentially.
Yeah, it's still early days, marked as RC, but introducing Wi-Fi support, that opens up huge flexibility for where you can actually put your server. Not everyone can easily run Ethernet cables everywhere.
True. Could be a game changer for some setups.
It really could. It's another sign of UnRAID 7 looking ahead, adapting to how people might want to use their systems in the future.
It's funny, like the article said, people often only realize how useful these features are after they upgrade. Like, how did I live without this?
Totally. It solves a problem you didn't quite realize you had or makes something much easier.
But we do have to acknowledge the buts. The upgrade path to 7 hasn't been perfectly smooth for absolutely everyone. There were reports of issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to be realistic. Some users hit snags, web GUI glitches, blank dashboards, maybe community apps not loading right away. No big software upgrade is ever totally flawless for 100% of users.
Okay, so what's the context there? Were these widespread showstopper problems?
Mostly no. The
Yeah.
key thing is, many of these reported issues seem to have known workarounds. Often they were tied to specific third-party plugins needing an update for version 7.
Plug-in compatibility. Always a factor in upgrades.
Exactly, or sometimes even older USB flash drives just starting to fail coincidentally around the time of the upgrade.
Right, and the crucial point seemed to be preparation, wasn't it?
Absolutely critical. The users who had recent backups, especially of their flash drive configuration, they were generally okay. They could troubleshoot, maybe roll back temporarily if needed without major data loss or disruption.
So the advice is, don't just click upgrade blindly.
Definitely not. Do your homework. Back up that flash drive seriously. Do it. Snapshot your VM disks if you can. Maybe jot down your Docker settings. Checking plugin compatibility beforehand is smart too. You could even try booting the new version in safe mode first as a kind of dry run.
Preparation makes a difference between a potential headache and a smooth transition.
It really does. It mitigates so much of the risk.
So circling back, that comfy feeling on 6.2, the argument is that staying put actually introduces its own risks over time, challenging that if it works today, it'll work tomorrow idea.
Yeah, that's presented as a kind of false sense of security because the tech world doesn't stand still. Staying on an older version, you can run into weird issues down the line.
Like what?
Well, silent failures maybe, where things start working correctly due to incompatibilities with newer hardware or other software components you add later. And a big one? Orphaned plugins.
Plugins that just stop getting updated for the old version.
Exactly. The developer moves on, focuses on version 7 compatibility, and suddenly that essential tool you rely on for managing VMs or checking disk health, it stops working, or worse, becomes insecure because it's not getting patched.
And that user quote really stuck out. Plugins will stop working eventually if you stay on 6.1. That feels like a real practical warning.
It is. It's not just theoretical. Your server's functionality could genuinely degrade over time simply due to the surrounding ecosystem moving on.
Plus, the article mentioned undocumented behaviors emerging in older versions. What's that about?
Basically, as the main community and development focus shifts to version 7, the older 6.1 might start interacting with newer network standards or hardware or other software in ways nobody fully tested or anticipated back when it was current. Little quirks, maybe bigger issues that just don't get ironed out anymore.
Okay, so staying put isn't really stable in the long run. It's more like managed decline.
That's a good way to put it. It becomes increasingly fragile.
So the whole perspective shifts. Upgrading isn't just taking a risk. It's framed as a proactive, strategic move. Smart, even.
Exactly. It's about keeping your system healthy, secure, and capable for the long haul. Recognizing that technology evolves and you need to evolve with it, at least somewhat.
UnRAID 7 isn't perfect. No software is.
Sure.
But it's where the active maintenance, the improvements, the security focus is.
Right. And delaying the inevitable upgrade out of fear. Well, the argument is that just makes the eventual jump harder, potentially more painful when you finally have to do it because something critical broke on 6.2.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We started with that very relatable question. My 6.1 stew setup works. It feels stable. Why mess with it for version 7? But what we've explored today, drawing on those user experiences and analysis, suggests that while 6.12 might feel comfortable now, staying there carries this growing set of risks.
Yeah, the illusion of stability, the security lag.
Exactly. The security aspect, which is huge. And then these valuable new features in 7, ZFS, Tailscale, the VM Docker improvements, they aren't just fluff. They address real future needs for storage integrity and usability.
Things you might really appreciate later on.
And yes, there are upgrade concerns. People have hit bumps. But the takeaway seems to be that with good preparation backups, checking plugins, those bumps are usually manageable.
Preparation is key. It turns a potential crisis into a solvable problem.
So ultimately, the decision is up to each user, of course.
Of course, it's your server, your setup.
But maybe the question to ask isn't just, is my server stable today?
Right. Maybe it's more about its long-term health, its viability. The digital world keeps changing fast. Your server is right in the middle of your digital life.
Staying on an outdated version, however comfortable now, could mean you're getting more vulnerable, missing out on key improvements.
Potentially setting yourself up for a bigger headache down the road.
So as you look at that trusty UnRAID 6.12 setup, yeah, think about how well it's working today. But also ask, how well will it serve you next year, the year after? As things keep evolving, what steps will you take to make sure your system stays secure, flexible, and ready for whatever comes next?
A good question to ponder.
That's your deep dive for today.